go. Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. This is our Under the Radar podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. And when we started these podcasts years ago, these Under the Radars used to be a two-man show with me and David Griggs. We're back going a little old school tonight, just me and Stalika. John, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing very well, Chad. It just seems a little bit odd without our West Coast colleague Rocco here tonight.
Yeah, well, we're going to try to get by without him, but I think we're off to a pretty good start here. In fact, I think it's been one of the best openings we've done in a long time, hasn't it?
Certainly in the past 3 to 4 years, absolutely.
Absolutely, one of our best openings, and maybe it's because somebody's missing. This feels a lot stronger of a show, but this is Under the Radar, where we talk about the 22 non-major conferences, the 22 conferences that are generally single-bid conferences, the multi-bid conferences are the power conferences, along with the American Big East, Atlantic 10 and West Coast Conference. Those conferences you can hear about during our Hoops HD report. Everybody else is fair game, John, because we don't have any top 25 teams, which would be a disqualifier as well.
Yep, I mean, this isn't like last year where we had the Mountain West in the under the radar portion towards the end of the year, but we still have to keep our eyes on New Mexico State, who's rampaging through the WAC that we'll get to later.
Yeah, them and Middle Tennessee inching towards the top 25 as well, but we only have a few weeks left of Under the Radar before we get to championship week. John, I think what I'll do is go ahead and pull up the standings here. We have a feature conference every week. This week it's going to be the MEAC. But, before we do that, I just want to comment that I think we're off to a great start this week, aren't we?
Don't jinx it.
This has just been one of the best. In fact, for what we've done so far, John, I think this podcast may be submitted for one of those, what are they, Web Emmys, the Webbies?
Yep.
All right. This is a great show so far. I don't know why it is something very different from our normal shows, and it's just been great. But let's take a little look here at the MEAC. There's the standings, and we had a big change in the standings here because over the course of the season until this week, we've seen a team highlighted in red there, meaning they were ineligible, and it's gone. You broke the story last week during our bracket rundown show, John.
Among the Hoops HD panelists, yes, but we also have a journalist from Mid-Major Madness who had also reached out to Savannah State's SID, so he was the one that ultimately confirmed that Savannah State will be eligible for the MEAC this year, and also Joe Lunardi, among other bracketologists, have also taken this into account and have started to bracket Savannah State, so definitely real news here.
Absolutely, and there they are, the Tigers tied for first place, both 8-1, them and North Carolina A&T. If you go by RPI as your tiebreaker, Savannah State has a slight edge there, and real fun team to play. You can see their results from this past week, including a 111-99 win over the weekend over South Carolina State. Lots of scoring when Savannah State's on the court.
Yep, they're going to be number one in the country as far as possessions go, but at the same time, they're also going to be running neck and neck with North Carolina A&T, who's coming off a pair of wins against Hampton and a surprisingly difficult win against Delaware State, who's going to be trending for another award later in the year.
Yeah, we can't discuss MEAC without discussing Delaware State. There they are, 0-23 versus D1 after they almost pulled the huge upset on the road at A&T. But John, should they continue to lose, they got, I believe, 8 more regular season games left, plus the MEAC tournament. They could be in line for our Centenary Award this year. And for those new to the show, why don't you tell them what the Centenary Award is?
Well, the Centenary Award is something that started back in 2011 when I believe Chad and a couple other voters had discussed adding Centenary to the list of teams that would be under consideration for their selection committee at the time. Because I think it was the year 2000. Oh, no.
What's that? John, we're doing great. This was our best podcast yet.
Oh, my God. Okay.
You know what? This was our
Chad,
best
we haven't
podcast
started yet.
The whole thing is just screwed up. Forget this. Forget it. I'm out of here.
All right.
Yep, so I guess now we'll be discussing this with the puppet instead, and that's going to be the origins of the Centenary Award.
So what are we talking about here? Like, when are we, just let me know when the show's going to start. Why did you all tell me that we were starting an hour later than what we normally do? I mean, by that point, I was like the show may have been over before I could get on here.
Well, you didn't seem to
That
be
wouldn't have
very
been-
enthusiastic once we broached the news that the MEAC is going to be our feature conference this week.
Well, I love this conference. I love the Savannah State story. I hope that they win the conference tournament and make the NCAA tournament and win a game in perhaps the opening round and get 2 units and save their school and are able to stay Div 1. That's what I really want.
You know, I
Yeah,
do want
before we
to,
get
I
a
want to
couple
say-
things here.
David,
I don't know
gotta
why did you tell me we were starting an hour later?
I have to apologize.
I
I
mean,
have to
we could have
apologize.
done the whole show before, and I have something to show you here. Before, like, I don't want this on the air though, so I want to show
okay,
you.
Okay, well, we'll go off the air, everybody. Okay, David, what do you have to show me?
Well, it's just this is the kind of publicity that I really think is. I mean, now you're the legal expert, but I mean the details of this story are greatly exaggerated, and I don't know why I'm in legal trouble. I don't know why we can't sue them.
David, we're still on the air, you know.
What? No, I thought you said we were starting an hour later.
I want to take a moment here to apologize to everybody. First of all, for David Griggs even being here. Second of all, to all those Webby voters out there, because of that great podcast we had going, and they were about to nominate us, and now David jumps up and just screws the whole damn thing up. We might as well just start over again. John, the MEAC. Here's the standings.
Yep, as we had discussed earlier, it's a 2-team race between North Carolina A&T and a suddenly eligible Savannah State team.
David, you're here. You want to talk a little Savannah State or what?
Yeah, I'm just a fan of this whole story. I mean, it was just kind of disappointing. They transitioned up to Division One, had a very rough transitional period. I think they were 7-79 in the 4 years that they were transitioning up. And again, underfunded, undersupported, but they have had some success. They were a first-place team a few years back. After all of that, they had announced toward the end of last year, I believe, that 18-19, so that would be next year, would be their last year at the Division One level. They were going to reclassify to Division Two. The one caveat to that was they said that, like, barring a massive influx of revenue or an infusion of revenue, they would have to transition down, not just for basketball, but for everything. And on top of that, they were ineligible for the NCAA tournament this year, or so we thought. They filed a waiver. They were granted the waiver. Here they are in first place competing for a championship. I mean, and this is just an incredible story. And what if they were to win this and make the NCAA tournament? I mean, would that generate enough support among the campus community, among the alumni, among some people in Savannah to keep them at the Div 1 level? Because a lot of things, first of all, you're losing 3 basketball scholarships, but you're also, it's a hit to the, I mean, it's a hit to the perception of your university. It kind of goes down a little bit, but a lot of scholarships and programs are going to be cut if they go to Div 2. Could this save their athletic department? And what a story.
Well, I'll tell you that, I mean, what I do know is that back in December, they actually made an application to the SI, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, the D2 conference that I believe has been accepted. So they have a conference lineup to even take them at the D2 level. Obviously, they can, try to turn around and come back out of that. And I really hope they do. It's going to be a story we'll probably follow not only the rest of this year, but into next year. Potential leading candidate for next year's Team of the People, even.
Very much so. In fact, I think we considered them this year. We really did. But yeah, very much so. Very much so.
well, let's kind of get back to what's going on this year. And coming up Monday night, there, John, perhaps the regular season game of the season in the MEAC, as A&T is at Savannah State.
That's going to be one of the feature games right there, but there's also going to be a nice one just below it between NC Central and Bethune-Cookman, who's also tied for third themselves.
Well, let me ask you this, John. A question I want to try to ask for a bunch of these conferences. Is there a team that you think might steal the automatic bid if it's not one of those top 2 teams? Is there a team that not tied for first that you think is capable of winning that conference tournament here?
I would always keep an eye out on hometown teams like Norfolk State and Hampton, who will be able to bring some of their fans locally out to the Scope. But at the same time, NC Central is another team that's had some recent history in the MEAC as well. So that's why I wanted to highlight their game on Monday.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, David, let's go back to the beginning here, swing on over to the America East, where Vermont just keeps winning, and we thought that they might have a road test at UMBC this past weekend. They did not.
No, they just blew them off the court. This is a very dangerous Vermont team. They're not going to have the resume. We talk about this all the time, under the radar teams that are better than their profile, and teams that, because of their resume being what it is by circumstance, ending up on the 12 and 13 line, but that are as good or probably better than a lot of teams that are inside the bubble but on the bottom half of the bracket. You know, who would you rather play, a 9 or a 10 seed? Most of them, or Vermont. I would probably rather face the 9 or the 10. This is a dangerous Vermont team. This is a team that almost won at Kentucky. This is a team that squeezed West Virginia last year. I'm sorry, was it West Virginia or Purdue? Purdue, I'm sorry. And returned virtually everybody. They don't. This is a really good team that a protected seed is going to have fits with.
This was also an emotional game for UMBC because they were also opening a brand new on-campus arena for their game against Vermont and end up getting blitzed.
Yeah, you see here's the upcoming schedule. Vermont at Albany. Probably the only really remaining tough test on the schedule there. Albany did give them a game in the home game. It was a close score, at least at the end, although I kind of felt that Vermont had the game in hand the whole way. Albany made a few runs late. Then hosting Lowell, who they should just roll by. So I expect them to be 11-0 next week when we do our next show.
Yeah.
But let's and like, I don't even think we're going to ask the question. I'll do it real quickly. David, anybody else you think might steal this conference tournament?
No, not at Vermont, not the way they've been playing.
No, I agree completely. John, over in the A-Sun, another team undefeated in conference play, Gulf Coast got the sweep over Jacksonville now, and with only, I think, a few games left in conference play, 5 games left, they have a 3-game lead and the tiebreaker.
It's pretty much just a matter of time until they get the 1 seed. So at this point, we also have to start paying attention to other teams that are also going to be in line for first-round games at home. So right now, you got a 3-way tie for third involving Lipscomb, the original team of the people, and JIT and North Florida, who are going to be duking out with each other for home games.
It would be kind of fun to see NJIT get a home game. I think they had one last year, but ended up losing.
2 years ago, they did.
2 years ago, I'm sorry.
Yeah, David, this Lipscomb team, really off to the great start this season, including the sweep over Belmont in the Battle of the Boulevard, started falling apart in conference play, started to bounce back a little bit the last couple of weeks, but then went ahead and lost to NJIT this weekend.
Yeah, at home, really surprising. This team's ceiling is rather high. You mentioned the 2 wins at Belmont. The problem is they don't always play up to it. To compare them to one of the on-the-radar teams, they kind of remind me of Florida. You just don't know what they're going to do on a given night, whether they're going to beat a top 10 team on the road or lose to somebody way, way, way outside the bubble. A little bit schizophrenic here.
All right. Well, David, do you think they could steal this conference tournament from Gulf Coast?
If anybody's going to do it, I think it would be them. Now, the problem is, depending on how this shakes out, they might have to win in the semifinals there. But, yeah, I mean, I think they can, but I'm not going to make that prediction at this point.
Well, it's actually a pretty big week this week for Lipscomb if they want to try to take that shot at the 2 seed even, hosting Jacksonville and North Florida. So this is a huge week for them in the conference in terms of at least taking a shot at that number 2 seed.
Yeah.
David, yet another team undefeated in conference play. We got a lot of them still. Here's Montana, 11-0 now.
Yeah, and how good have the Grizz looked this year? I've just been really impressed with them, especially since conference play started. They weren't, I'll be honest, coming in, when conference play was beginning, I thought they were good, but they wouldn't have been my pick to run away with it like this. But yet here they are, and they're relatively dangerous. One of the problems is that it's not the easiest team to watch all the time. You have that Pluto Sports, but, sometimes you can find better streams out there.
Yeah. Uh, John, how about that same question? Somebody else that you look at that might be able to steal this conference tournament. It is on a neutral court in Reno.
I still think the preseason favorite Idaho is going to be a serious candidate to play spoiler here. They did get a road sweep against Portland State and Sacramento State over the weekend, but you also have to keep an eye on Weber State, who also has a recent history of winning the Big Sky as well.
Yeah, and if you look at the upcoming schedule there on the screen, Idaho with interesting battle Friday night against Eastern Washington towards the top of the standings. Montana with a pair of home games against a fading Portland State team included there.
Why isn't this tournament going to be played at Montana? Like it should be. They used to do it right. They no longer do it right.
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Again, I mean, you wrote up the 10 Commandments. This did not make the cut. But, I mean, I kind of want to sanction this conference, one for Pluto Sports and another for not playing their conference tournament or for playing their conference tournament at a predetermined site.
Well, when we go to 15 Commandments, we'll add those in. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Okay. Big South was a fun night of Big South play tonight here with a High Point with a road win at Radford by a point this evening. Campbell with a close game. I think that Charleston Southern Liberty game was close most of the way as well, as was Asheville at Longwood. Real fun night tonight in the Big South. All those finals are up there on the screen. But now Asheville has opened up a one-game lead as Radford is continuing to fade.
Right. Asheville playing really well lately, and you know they have a one-game lead over the second-place team, and that is for this conference. That's about a 5-game lead in any other conference.
But I think the other major surprise we're overlooking is Liberty beating Winthrop at home, because that's the reason the Eagles are not going to be in a first-place tie with Asheville right now.
Yeah. And you realize that Asheville could become a very busy city in that first week of championship week, hosting both the Big South and the SoCon tournaments if Asheville continues to win. So we'll see how that plays out. But upcoming schedule of the Big South, we have here only once with the games that were played tonight. Radford at Asheville's interesting game coming up this weekend, though. I think that's
going to be a fun one. And again, Asheville now with a 2-game lead, but with Winthrop in the mix, these are high stakes games because they determine who's going to host the conference tournament. They do it right. Big Sky does it wrong. Big South does it right. A-Sun does it right.
In terms of that question that we've been asking
America
about,
East does it right.
Who could steal this conference tournament?
Big Sky does it wrong.
Campbell is a team, David, though, that I'm looking at that could steal this conference tournament. Chris Clemens, an absolutely amazing player. I think he had about 350 points tonight last time I checked.
So it went up. Like the last time I checked, he was at 337. So he must have added some more. I switched the game.
And that's not a bad pick because Campbell almost pulled it off last year before losing at Winthrop in the championship game in 2017.
Yep.
Let's keep moving along here. John, Big West Conference. We now have a Santa Barbara Davis tie.
Yep. Not going to be seeing Hawaii at the top anymore, not after finally hitting the road because they lost one of the aforementioned games to the Gauchos, and also a bad loss at Cal Poly, so that knocks them out. And thanks to a win against Northridge and Long Beach, that puts UC Davis in a prime position to contend.
This conference, there's 9 teams in it, and 6 of them have just been fantastic fun to watch. And then again, the top of it is in the 13-14 seed range, which is where we're used to seeing it. Last year, it kind of – I don't know what happened to it last year, but again, we got the Big West back. And, I kind of forgotten last year, not that it wasn't fun, but just tell them what a fun league this is, what the rivalries are like. The black and blue rivalry was a great game. And it's going to be great the rest of the year, and the conference tournament's going to be great. It's one of my favorites. It's no Northeast Conference, but it's up there.
Circle this game coming up tomorrow night, Thursday night. Santa Barbara at Davis, battle for first place. a contender for the end of the regular game of the day, but it's not even going to get that because of a few other games we've got coming up. But
Yeah.
really big game tomorrow night coming up in the Big West Conference.
But we
Yeah.
know
Is
the
that on
game.
television? I mean, I know it's going to be streamed one way or another. Is it on television? That Davis.
That game is going to be on TV. Will only be streamed on the Big West
Okay.
website.
So
But in a couple,
yeah.
I was gonna say in a couple of weeks, another game we should be circling is UC Riverside and Cal State Northridge, because that's going to have survival board implications because the ninth place team does not go to the tournament in Anaheim.
I'll just take the 9th place team for crying out loud.
David, College of Charleston found a way to win 2 games on the road this week. Are they starting to pull away in the Colonial now?
Yeah, and I've been really rough on them all year long. They were one of my I liked them so much coming into the year that I thought they were good enough to end up inside the bubble. Clearly not there, but finally here in recent weeks, stringing together enough wins to maybe start looking like the team we thought they were. Now a game in first place with, I want to say, 6 games remaining. And, the tournament being in Charleston, I still think this team has a high ceiling that they really haven't played up to. But the win at Northeastern last week was pretty impressive. Northeastern really good at home this year.
As was the game at Hofstra, because both of these teams are in the top half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and John, do you have somebody that you think could steal this conference tournament, or do you think this is Charleston's at this point, especially with them hosting it?
I would still keep an eye on Northeastern here.
Okay. Upcoming schedule, and you see there Thursday, UNC Wilmington at James Madison, Saturday, James Madison at Elon. Cross those games off. David, we've had a mumps outbreak.
When you first sent this over, I thought you were joking. I thought that the mumps was something you were vaccinated for about hours after being born. There's been a mumps outbreak. This is the first time a game's ever been canceled that I know of because of mumps.
Both of those next 2 James Madison games have been technically postponed. I don't know with so little time left in the season if they're going to even get a chance to reschedule them. Or
what is the MMR? Aren't you given that at birth? I thought that was mumps, measles, and what was the other one? Rubella or something.
Rubella.
Yeah, thank you.
All I can tell you is that there's mumps in the James Madison basketball team. So I knew they had some lumps this year. I didn't know about any bumps.
That is. Oh, for God.
Let's go to Conference USA. And John, Saturday we saw the upset of the season in CUSA as Western Kentucky went to San Antonio and did not come home with a win.
Yeah, they lose at San Antonio, and they were also dancing with the devil at UTEP, but managed to escape that environment. So that's going to really damage any at-large hopes the Hilltoppers had.
Let's pull up some team sheets on this, David. I'm going to pull up Western Kentucky's team sheet as well as Middle Tennessee. Which way do you lean now at this point? If either one of them can get an at-large bid, because that's now 5 quadrant 3 losses for WK.
Yeah, you're kind of splitting hairs here, but I guess the one thing that might be the tipping point is that win at Western Kentucky by Middle Tennessee. I mean, they're close and everything else. If you look at, I don't know, like Middle Tennessee, the better RPI, the better out-of-conference schedule, slightly better strength of schedule overall. The 5th over, I mean, again, the best overall win, and I am getting really hung up on that, is got to go to Western Kentucky, but Middle Tennessee wins everything else, including the conference standings, including the win over Western at Western. I think it's Western. I think it's Middle.
And as far as the remaining game goes, Middle Tennessee has the far easier schedule with 5 of 7 remaining at home. Including the home rematch against Western Kentucky.
Yeah, and Middle is done with Old Dominion. Western's got to play that Old Dominion team one more time. That is the other team up there at 8-2 in the league standings. David, you think somebody else besides these two could steal this conference tournament bid?
Potentially. Old Dominion has played really well. I mean, I know that they haven't beaten either one of those two, and they've had them at home, but I mean, they've blown through everybody else. I certainly wouldn't overlook them. And is San Antonio, while probably not going to win the conference, one of the more improved teams in this league and maybe all across the scope of under the radar. I think they'd won something like a total of 5 games in the last 37 years before, or it had been a while since they've been any good.
Yeah, I guess a couple of just
if you're really looking for.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, if you're really looking for a team under the radar to win this conference, it's got to be Dapper Dan's bunch at Marshall here.
Marshall doesn't play defense.
They do have the win over Middle, though, so you got to give them credit for that. Although it was right before the Western Kentucky game, you kind of wonder how much Middle was looking past that game before it was played.
And this was another team that also gave Xavier a bit of a scare back in December.
Yeah. They didn't play defense.
Upcoming schedule, Middle is hosting Rice in North Texas this week. Western is hosting Florida Atlantic and Florida International. So let's just move on to the next conference.
Yeah.
David, there it is, the Horizon League. We now have a two-way tie between Wright State and NKU.
Yeah, and what a fun race this has been. And again, just the stakes there, because you're looking at a double bye and home court advantage. I love how they do this conference. Oh, wait, never mind. Screw it.
John, NKU did pick up a pair of road wins to move into that first place tie this week.
NKU picked up the road wins and ended up getting the first place tie because Wright State had a bedwetting of their own at Cleveland State over the weekend. But also the other team you have to look at, Illinois Chicago, quietly slipping into the 3-hole after sweeping the Oakland-Detroit roadie.
Yeah, how improved are they? We're used to seeing them at the bottom of this conference. Here they are, not just in third, but a game out of first, and a realistic chance, if things fall right, of getting that double bye and playing at home.
Yeah, real impressive. Besides that, Illinois Chicago hosting Youngstown and Cleveland State, so they could pick up 2 more wins and contend for that 1 seed at least. And at least, the advantage there of being the 1 seed is if you have a 3-team race, the other 2 teams will have to be in the other semifinals. So that is the advantage of pulling out the top of the conference there, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Although I know, Dave, you don't like it, I know. Let's go on here to the Ivy League, where John, we've got another undefeated team, Penn, now out to a 6-0 Ivy League start with their wins over Brown and Yale this week.
I have to admit, it's quite remarkable that Penn, with a 6-0 record, finally plays a road game at Princeton and actually ended up getting some decent roadkill. So this puts them in the driver's seat for now.
Driver's seat for now, David. I think it's a driver's seat the rest of the way. I think this Harvard team is not even as good as that 5-1 record, and they got a 3-game lead on everyone else.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And the other thing is just it wasn't just that they went in the Penn, it went in the Princeton and won. I mean, they blew it open down the stretch. And that's one of their harder tests. I know they haven't been to Harvard yet, but I think I mean, we're almost at the halfway point here, and they've certainly looked good throughout the first half of conference play, better than anybody else. I think it's theirs.
Yeah, and John just circled it. They are at Harvard this weekend. They win that game. This conference may be over in terms of the regular season, but
right. And what it's, the Ivy League tournament, it is kind of log jammed here in the middle. You got 1 game separating teams 3 through 6, and of those, there's only room for 2 of those teams.
3 through 7.
3 through 7. Excuse me. Thank you. 3 through 7, and there's only room for 2 of those teams.
Do you think the 3rd or 4th place team could win this automatic bid? Do you think Brown or Princeton could steal it?
No, but it would be fun to see them. I'm assuming it's at the Palestra, a Penn-Princeton semifinal. Yeah.
All right. Let's. It was a Penn-Princeton semifinal last year, also.
And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I don't know about you.
Metro Atlantic John Ryder, half-game lead over Canisius now, but both tied in the loss column with 2 losses.
Yeah, they were able to get more of a workman-like victory at Quinnipiac on Sunday, but at the same time, Canisius still holding on to, well, not exactly within they're a game and a half, or just a half a game outside of first place. See what happens when the puppet just storms in out of nowhere. But they are.
You all were going to do the show. I would have missed the whole show. You told me the wrong time. I
We
would
had
have
one
been
of
an
our
hour
best
late.
shows ever going, David, and you just completely screwed it up.
You told me the wrong time. I wouldn't. It's lucky I logged on.
Yep. What I meant to say was Canisius is still tied in the loss column.
Canisius hosting Siena and Fairfield this week. Ryder, a couple road game at Marist, and slightly better than normal Marist team, but still last place in the conference.
The funny thing about that is that it is an entirely accurate statement. They are slightly better than what they normally are, but they're still in last place.
I don't know. David, can anyone besides Ryder or Canisius win this conference tournament?
I think Iona can, simply because they've done it before, just to annoy me. And don't overlook – no, you can overlook Siena. Go ahead.
They are hosting it.
Yes. How's that? If the second place team might have to play a road game in the quarterfinals.
You're right. Oh, geez. Mid-American Conference: Buffalo 10-1, Toledo 9-2. Still looking like the 2 best teams by far, John, aren't they?
Yeah, it seemed like it was just a brief blip on the radar as far as Buffalo losing at Kent State and Toledo also having the surprising loss at home against Ball State the previous week. But they're going to be certainly on a collision course as far as the 1 and the 2 seeds go. But certainly there's going to be a nice race going on as far as the other 2 buys, as it involves Ball State, Western Michigan, Miami, and Kent State.
Interesting thing about Buffalo, this is very categorical, and I wish Tytel or I need to remember to ask this tomorrow or whenever we do. I don't think, and I went back and looked, there's ever been an outright first place team with a top 40 RPI that was left out. Here is Buffalo, with a top 30 RPI. Now, there have been teams with RPIs in the 20s that weren't selected or would not have been selected had they not won the automatic bid. I want to say like Middle Tennessee was one of them one year. But that is a historically high RPI for an outright first place team to not be selected.
But look at the actual profile.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
no tier 1 wins, 1 tier 2 win. It's just not there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't justify giving them an at-large bid. I honestly couldn't.
Right.
There's the upcoming schedule there. But, John, let me ask you, is there a team besides Buffalo or Toledo that you think is going to be dangerous come conference tournament time?
There's going to be one that's in my backyard, and they're going to be hosting Toledo on Friday night, and that's Mother Miami here. So that's definitely been a snake pit as far as other teams in the MAC this year. And the first-year head coach Jack Owens has certainly brought a similar style of play from when he was the associate head coach at Purdue last year. So it's definitely been a much improved team as compared to years past.
Yeah, real good season for Miami. Both Miamis, more so maybe this one compared to what we expected. But
right.
David, Missouri Valley Conference, Loyola Chicago did pick up a real nice win over a Missouri State team, but it's a Missouri State team that is gone completely down the toilet. So I don't know how big of a
right. Well, I mean, this conference has kind of eaten itself up. A lot of the teams that did real well, and there were a lot of them out of conference, were not the ones we were saying that Northern Iowa and Loyola, if they ran away from the league, and Missouri State, another one, would have a really good chance. Here's Loyola in first place, but they're not exactly running away from it with 3 losses. But if anyone is going to be selected without the auto bid, it's got to be them. But in order for that to happen, they pretty much they need to go 17-4, wouldn't you think? Win out to the championship game.
Well, they at least have the profiles coming up here. They have at least that big time Sector 1 win at Section 1 win up at Florida, but still you
Yeah.
look all the way down there, quadrant floor 4 on the red side, and you really can't take them, can you? Indiana
Oh, it
State
can be
and
done.
Milwaukee, 2 losses.
Yeah.
It's ugly. It's ugly. It's ugly.
They're inside my bubble.
But John, you have a potential bed stealer here.
I think we have to look at Barry Hinson's bunch at Southern Illinois. I keep waiting for the bloom to come off the rose, but they've actually been pretty consistent for the past 3 weeks.
Barry Hinson is one of those people that needs to be on television a lot more than he is. Like they need to mic him up for the games because the man is hilarious. Not intentionally either. He's just a very amusing person. We couldn't hit a bull in the butt with a bass fiddle.
Loyola's got a trip to Indiana State, and they're hosting Valpo this week. Always dangerous when you play the trees, though.
Yeah.
Let's head over to our favorite conference, David, the Northeast Conference, where we have a rare team running away with the conference suddenly, it looks like.
Yeah, Wagner, and we've been projecting them, even Titel projecting them inside the first 4. I think you had them as high as the 15 line in one of your brackets. So,
I do, and I still we are 15 seed right now.
Right. Now, this conference has gotten 15 seed before. I want to say it was Robert Morris did it one year when Mike Rice was their coach. I don't recall them being seeded that high since. And I want to say Central Connecticut got a 14 one year. So it has happened. But Wagner having a really, really good year, and it should be fun. They're going to have – I don't recall the last time they were in the NCAA tournament. And to see them get the chance to play – on their home court throughout should be good. They've certainly earned it.
And speaking of Robert Morris, what's happened to them? Because I believe that's now 3 or 4 straight that they've lost, including a pair of games at home over the past week.
Bobby Moe. Yeah.
And what I like here also is you've got 3 through 6 all tied. That see who ends up getting those last 2 home court games. And Mount St. Mary's also is kind of right there also. There is a chance we could have the Battle of Brooklyn in a quarterfinal, though, if things play out this way between LIU and SFBK, one of our favorite rivalries.
Yes, if you watch nothing else during championship week, if they play in this tournament, watch that game.
And you're going to be watching them also. When we talk about this next week, they still haven't played each other yet this season. They're going to play each other twice in the last 3 weeks of the season, so it's going to be real interesting there. Wagner's scheduled this week. They're hosting Bryant. They're at Fairleigh Dickinson. But let's move on to the OVC, where John, Belmont 11-1. Murray State's still right on their tails there, though, at 10-2.
Yeah, the beat still rolls on as far as Belmont sweeping a relatively easy road trip at Eastern and Moorhead, and Murray also getting a decent win against SEMO and Tennessee Martin, who's also been way down compared to where they've been in recent years.
Yeah, and David, this SEMO team, Southeast Missouri State, has been in red all season, just like Savannah State was. And I do have some breaking news. They did not apply for a waiver, and they did not get one granted.
Really? Well, that's too bad because they're actually right there. You're starting to see a little bit of separation here between Edwardsville and everybody else. What do we got here? We've got, is it 6 games remaining? So with we might be seeing some survival board games this week. That the loser of that Eastern Moorhead game, which I think is this Saturday, although I don't remember, might be in some trouble because that might potentially put them 3 games back with only 4 games remaining.
That game is coming up on, is it there? Yeah, Moorhead at Eastern there coming up on Saturday. Correct.
No one's been removed from the survival board yet. We've certainly had some teams taken off italics. No one been removed for it. Would one of these teams be the first?
It could happen very soon, but we've got a real interesting week coming up for Belmont. 2 very tough road tests at Tennessee State, at Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, and again, that's a rough road trip for them. Both those teams pretty good at home this year, but I don't know. Belmont has looked really good.
Do you think somebody could steal this bid like Jacksonville State did last year?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it could be Jacksonville State again. They've been playing really well. Austin Peay kind of overachieving, and Murray. I mean, don't count them out either.
All right, let's flip over to the Patriot League, John, where we have the dominating Bucknell Bison, although they did suffer a loss on Monday night.
Well, it's never surprising when you're losing at Lehigh, so certainly no shame in that. They did have the win against Bucknell earlier, so they still have a comfortable 2-game lead. And with the Patriot League playing on campus sites, the Bison are still going to be in a favorable position as far as claiming the automatic bid down the road.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to beat Bucknell in this tournament, David. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I agree with it because they're at home and they're going to be hosting the winner of the 8-9 game, which is not a bye game, but pretty close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bucknell this week they've got Colgate and Loyola at home. Interesting. I mean, that is the first place battle between the top 2 teams there. That Colgate game at least coming up on Monday night.
Yeah.
SoCon.
The SoCon! Love the SoCon this year.
David, you wrote all about the SoCon today, so I'll let you take the SoCon.
Yeah, East Tennessee State, this is a dangerous team. Again, another team that's a lot better than what the committee will likely seat them, just because their profile doesn't have the wins on it. But, again, real competitive here. You have Wofford, who won at North Carolina. As we all remember, pretty good in conference, but they are 4 games behind East Tennessee State. That's how good this East Tennessee State team is. And, Xavier, who is inching closer to the 1 line, this team had a 20-point lead in the second half on Xavier at Xavier. Now, I know they didn't hold on, but this is a really good team. I think they've only lost 1 game since then. And had they stolen that game at Xavier or held on to win it, are we talking about them? Are they in the top 25 at this point? Had they not blown that 20-point lead?
Well, a couple things. That was actually a 22-point lead that they had in the second half, and
I believe 22. Also, my mistake.
I believe it's also the 3rd year that Steve Forbes has been coaching.
Totally wrong, David.
ETSU. He's actually a Greg Marshall disciple, so they do have somewhat of a similar style of play as to what you would normally see out of them.
Yeah, that's an ETSU profile. Obviously, nothing there, but and the Troy loss is pretty bad. But yeah, I mean, if you turn that Xavier loss into a Xavier win and you get rid of that Troy loss, it'd be an interesting story. I think it would be.
Right, and again, have not lost a game since December 16th. Of their 4 losses, 3 were in November.
Mm-hmm. 15 win streak right now for the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And this week they've got a game at VMI and a real tough test Monday night at Greensboro, the second best.
Yeah, that one's going to be a fun one. You wish it counted for a little more, but again, this tournament in a predetermined site.
John, do you think someone could steal this bid?
I know it's a little bit even below what we're used to thinking, but keep an eye on Western Carolina, because I'll also get into their head coach as far as one of my final thoughts towards the end of the show.
Yeah, keep an eye on them losing. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Chad, I do actually have to give a shout out here, and I don't mean it as a backhanded compliment, although it's going to come out that way. Can we pull the Citadel up? The Citadel is a team that we're used to seeing win 5 in the neighborhood of 5 games a year. They've actually strung together a really nice streak. The East Tennessee State team we just talked about, the Citadel took them to the wall recently. As you see, they're losing by just 2. And here they are, like, we can't see it chronologically, but, I mean, they've had a stretch of like 3 or 4 games where they've only lost 1 of them.
Look at those wins over Furman and Wofford over the last 2 games out. That was huge surprises in both of those games, and plus the win at Mercer on January 27th. Those top 3 wins all coming in the last week and a half or so. Incredible by the Citadel, actually, by their standards.
Right, and we're not used to. Here they are on the cusp of a 10 Div 1 win season. I don't even remember that happening ever. So again, a much improved Citadel team that's playing really well in recent weeks.
And David, look at this. They are currently a tie for sixth place. They could avoid the opening round of the SoCon tournament with a sixth place finish. I've never seen that before.
I don't think we have. I mean, I just don't ever remember that. So really hard. Obviously, being the type of institution that it is, it's really, really hard to compete in anything, especially basketball. So what those kids are doing is remarkable. It really is.
Let's go ahead. Pull up the Southland Conference here. I would note that there is a score that's missing from the screen there. Nicholls State did win a 4-point road win at Abilene Christian. They are now 9-2. You see right below me here, hashtag Go Colonels. This is the team, David, that I'm done with Stephen F. Austin. I'm done with Sam Houston, Southeastern. This is my Southland champion right here.
SFA is still going to win it.
No. This Nicholls State team, I picked them finish 13th preseason. This team, they lost 7 starters off of last year's team that won, I think, 9 games. It's been
well, they just needed to get rid of those players. Open up some roster.
But here we are, 2 more wins on the road, including that 81-4 win at New Orleans there, John. And one of the fastest teams in the nation, fun to watch. You want to join me on the Nicholls State bandwagon?
I'm still more impressed as to how they were able to start 7 guys last year.
Yeah, they had some lineup issues, but no, in all seriousness, this is a really good story, and it kind of came out of nowhere because they did nothing they did in November and December indicated that they would be as good as they've been in conference.
No, they had two D1 wins heading into Southland play. They were awful.
Yeah.
Here they are this week. They already won the Abilene Christian game. They're at Corpus Christi on Saturday, and I think they're hosting Sam Houston State next week on Wednesday. I'm all on board with it. You guys don't want to join me? I'll be laughing at you on Selection Sunday when their name is called. That's all I got to say.
I know our colleague Rocco isn't here, but I'm sure he would also say keep an eye on Southeastern Louisiana, who's also been hanging around the top all year.
Grambling, one game. Look at
lost to Alabama State, moving Grambling within a game. David, can we have an ineligible team win a regular season title? Is it going to happen?
Can we have Grambling win something? Grambling deserves a waiver on the grounds that we need to get to work on this. This could be our project. We will take it over. Grambling, their officials, they don't have to do anything. We will file it. What's our mitigating circumstance?
Well, first of all, just one note here that they are eligible for the conference tournament, so they will be in the SWAC tournament. So, if they win that tournament, absolutely, they should be in the NCAA tournament. Regular season, I think so. They pull off a double. Heck, they should be a 15 seed.
Right. I don't know. I want God. It would just be the cruelest thing ever that if Grambling, having one of the best seasons in school history, was unable to go to the NCAA tournament in a year they actually could have qualified for it.
John, big week for Grambling at Prairie View, at Texas Southern.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as big as what it would be in years past, especially with Texas Southern having a down year. But at the same time, let's also keep an eye on Pine Bluff, who's also going to be making a sneakily difficult road trip at Southern and Alcorn State as well.
And we also got to point out that Mississippi Valley picked up their second win of the season this week and may have elevated themselves completely out of the Centenary Award consideration.
Yeah. It's
rare that a team with 2 D1 wins that award, although possible.
Right. Now, are we even debating this, or are we just going with 351 in the J&G?
We're debating it.
Are we?
Absolutely.
Debate
absolutely.
It. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Summit League, David, South Dakota State picked up a win over North Dakota State this week.
They blasted them. I actually watched quite a bit of that game, making it a point to watch South Dakota and South Dakota State as much as I can because I actually enjoy this conference, but it just dawned on me about a week or two ago that I hadn't really seen many of the games. So, but real impressive showing. This is a good South Dakota State team. I forgot
So
to rank them. I think.
a very, very dangerous South Dakota State team that I think could win a round of 64 game. They got that road trip to Denver though this week. South Dakota got blasted at Denver a couple weeks ago, John.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So,
John, do you think somebody else could steal this bid besides those two teams?
Well, we know what Fort Wayne did back in December when they knocked off Indiana, but this is going to be one of their bigger tests of the years. They go to South Dakota and Omaha themselves and then host Western Illinois.
I love John's comment he just made that Fort Wayne is going to have a bigger test when they go to South Dakota and Omaha than when they went to.
yes, that is again hilarious but correct. I normally say that, like, don't do the predetermined site, do it right. Having said that, if the chalk holds here and it's South Dakota State in the final in South Dakota, that would be an enormously fun game. Again, if you watch nothing else during championship week, watch that game and the LIU Brooklyn St. Francis Brooklyn game.
And thank you, John, for pointing out to us that South Dakota has a very tough game coming up on Sunday when they are hosting the entire nation of Peru.
Yeah.
Olympics, isn't it? With all the nations getting involved.
Right. Yeah. It's part of the Winter Olympics. It's really cold in South Dakota, and Peru sent their team there.
These will be the satellite Olympics as opposed to the ones taking place in Korea.
Oh, is that where they are? Korea? Okay.
Another undefeated team in their conference, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, 10-0, picked up only one win this week at rival Louisiana Monroe, but still rolling through conference play.
Yeah, really good team.
I mean, Texas State looked like they might be an interesting story, but not when you're losing to Coastal Carolina and not when you're getting swept by a hot Appalachian team.
He worked it in.
You know what? The podcast has been going so good with John, at least, and now he just completely destroyed the whole thing. So, perhaps the game of the season, the Sun Belt, coming up tomorrow night, though. Louisiana is at Georgia State.
Yeah, I wish I still lived in Atlanta. I'd go to that game.
David, to put this in perspective, Georgia State lost their first two Sun Belt games. They're on a 9-game winning streak. Louisiana on a 10-game winning streak. Two of the hottest teams in the nation meeting tomorrow night.
Right. I'll definitely be watching that, or trying to anyway. But again, Ron Hunter doing a really good job with this team. They kind of stumbled early on in the season, but they are really rolling now. And if anyone's going to catch Louisiana or clip them in the conference tournament, it would be Georgia State.
Yeah, I think this league comes down to those two teams at the end of the day. I mean, last year, we had Troy come out of nowhere to steal it, but I don't think we're going to see that this season.
Right.
Last conference for the night, the WAC. Yet another undefeated team, New Mexico State, took care of Rio Grande Valley very easily this week. Although it was close, I think, for the first half, but then they just turned it on.
Yeah. New Mexico State really hasn't even been challenged. I think the biggest tests, the game at Grand Canyon, they already won that. They're going to run the table, and they're going to be inside the bubble. I don't know what line the committee's going to put them on if they run all the way through, which I think they will. But even if they slip up in the conference tournament, how do you not select this team?
And with Seattle also beating Utah Valley, that also denied the Wolverines a chance to keep a hold of second place outright. So now we have a logjam underneath New Mexico State.
Yeah, but does it matter?
That was a real nice win by Seattle, and I would circle on New Mexico State's schedule, not this coming up week, but the week after, at Utah Valley and at Seattle. That is, if they are going to lose, one of those two games may be it. Those are two very dangerous games for them, and they got to win them both if they're going to need an at-large bid at the end of the day, which they shouldn't need. But this week they get Bakersfield and Grand Canyon at home. We love the Lopes, but I don't know that the Lopes can win at New Mexico State.
No.
And the funny thing is, for New Mexico State, I think the bigger game isn't going to be Grand Canyon, but when they actually go to Utah Valley the following week.
Right.
Didn't I just say that?
Yeah. Yeah, we just,
John, since you're falling asleep there, let me let you talk about the team of the people. Cal Baptist, a big 3-0 week, including an amazing win over Notre Dame.
Yeah, look at this. 18 and John, but I mean, just 18-4 on the season. They're going to win it all. They're going to win it all.
I thought Chad was going to be setting me up for their big win against the Academy of Art, because that's now put Cal Baptist back into the top 25.
Woohoo!
Back in the top 25, they got their makeup game against Hawaii Hilo coming up this week, along with Frank Biola in town again.
Yeah.
Pitch for the Mets? No.
Yeah, he did, Frank Viola. He's playing D2 basketball now.
Yeah, it's a tough, real tough. But let's, where do we go? Top 25?
Yeah, 25. We're ranking 25 teams this week.
Top 25. Here we go. How about top 10 lists? That's more like it. Number one team, top 10 under the radar teams is, of course, New Mexico State. Is there any doubt about that one at this point?
I had middle above them, but not by much. It's 1 and 1A.
Oh, there they are. Middle Tennessee coming in at number 2 fairly solidly. Number 3, Western Kentucky on their heels, and right below Western Kentucky, Loyola Chicago. I think those are, I don't know, John, is there any doubt about those 4 being the top 4?
In the top 4, although I would have had Western Kentucky a little bit lower in Loyola Chicago, up to 3rd place after Western lost at San Antonio last week.
East Tennessee State dominating the Southern Conference, coming in at 5th.
I like this East Tennessee State team. I hope they make it, because they can't. One of their wins better be that last one.
Two-way tie for 6th between Buffalo and Louisiana. I think that's pretty fair also. I like both those teams a lot.
Yeah.
8th place was that Vermont team, still undefeated in the America East.
Yep.
9th place, South Dakota State, coming in there pretty solidly. We've just talked about them. And last but not least, in the top 10, Belmont coming in there at number 10, David.
Yeah, and looking at the top 10, I never recall this late in the year feeling like there were 9 teams that could legitimately win a round of 64 game. I mean, legitimately. And I think who did we have in the neighborhood of the 9 and the 10 line teams, like Missouri, and who else was down? Like I forget.
I would
we
put
just did
somebody
a
like now. I'd put like somebody like Marquette in all for their win tonight would be like a 10 seed. You know, something like that.
I mean, I would almost rather. I mean, who would you rather play? And I know who has the better profile. Okay. I'm not talking about that, but who would you rather play?
No doubt. If I'm a 7 seed, if I'm a 6 seed, I'd much rather play Marquette than play South Dakota State or play Belmont,
right.
Even though some bottom of this. 4 honorable mentions. Teams also receiving votes: Old Dominion, Montana, Savannah State, and Nichols State. I wonder who voted for those last 2.
I don't know, but those are great picks. I would rather play Savannah State. God, I hope Savannah State wins that tournament. Oh, man.
I guess on that note, let me run through each of you for any final thoughts. John, let me start with you.
I teased a little bit earlier about what involving Western Carolina in a final thought. I mean, if that's the case, either something very good happened or something very bad happened. In this case, it would be something good, because longtime head coach Larry Hunter got his 700th career win. His very first year as a head coach, he was actually at Division III Wittenberg, which was in Springfield, Ohio. He won the national title there in 1977. Also spent about a decade at OU coaching notable players like Gary Trent Sr., and then after spending a few years as an assistant at NC State under Herb Sendek, he also moved on to Western Carolina. So congratulations to Hunter and his 700 career wins.
Well, congratulations, Coach Hunter. And David, you want to finish us off for the evening?
Yes. In the past, we did some things to make championship week a little bit more fun. We remember how this actually predates Team of the People, where we would assign each other teams and we were required to root feverishly for that team. I don't think in all the years we did it, any of our teams made it past the quarterfinals. So we abandoned that practice. But like, and again, the Team of the People is Cal Baptist. That will not change. But our Team of Championship week, rather than assign individual ones, should be Savannah State. I really am. This would be one of the greatest stories, and it'll be like the Great West Tournament, the great tournament that no one saw. This would be the greatest story maybe in years, and not many people will know it if they're able to keep that program at the Div 1 level with the windfall of revenue that this would generate.
Well, you know what, David? They may actually become for the rest of the season our co-team of the people along with Cal. Maybe we just have two of them. We have one for now, one for championship week. Why not? We make up the rules here. We can do
we can do what we want. There's no rule saying we can't. We almost picked them as team of the people. We talked about them, but we didn't think that they would be what they are. Like, I mean, we could have helped with their waiver. How much fun would that have been?
Well, I think we helped them by waiver.
Them.
Yeah.
All I know, David, is that last week you made a huge case on our show that they should have gotten a waiver, and the day after we found out they did get a waiver.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Right, yeah.
On behalf of Savannah State Nation, I think they owe you a ton of thanks.
All right. Well, I'm glad to help. This would be incredible. I like NCAA in and of itself, being a Centenary Award winner just a year ago, going into the NCAA tournament would be amazing in and of itself, but not nearly as amazing as this.
I guess, David, the only bad thing about all this is I did just double check my notes here. You are still banned from the city of Savannah.
I thought you said you were working on that.
It's still not allowed. But on that
note, what kind of an attorney are you?
On behalf of John Salika and David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow night with a Bracket Rundown show.